Hello, everybody. Digmbot here. Welcome back to Opposing Views. Once again, I am joined by a rather hungry Scarlet Dragon and Lone Samurai, and
Pizza.
Dragon
Nekokitwolf.
need food.
Dragon need food. So today, as promised, we have the topic of Japanese versus Western game developers and their portrayal of gender and sexuality in gaming. So,
I have a story.
well, let's start with Nico's story time. Go ahead, Nico.
In the first episode, we talked about different sexualities being portrayed in games, and Japan is pretty bad at that. Like they like, yeah, it's okay with yaoi and yuri and stuff like that. So I was watching the new Phoenix Wright game, and there's a character named Robin, and you think he's a he, by the way, but then you learn that he's was forced to become a male, and at first I thought he was trans, but actually no, he was actually a girl. And he liked girly things. So I was hoping that, oh, he's a guy and he wants to be a girl and yes, transsexuals. I never seen this in Japan. And no. I was so disappointed. They're very scared of doing something like that. They'll like lose views and stuff.
Huh.
I was so
Interesting.
disappointed.
So yeah, that's it's actually a good kind of lead in. So Japanese games are not going to portray a lot of the stuff, even though Western games aren't doing a ton of it, but you're not going to see even that much of it in Japanese games. And it comes back to us talking about the chainmail bikini conundrum. And a lot of that I think probably, Nico, is anime bias, but some of it also is cultural bias from our end. I would advise or encourage everybody to go check out Gaijin Goomba because he spent a lot of time in Japan and he has a show dedicated to studying the differences between East and West, Japan specifically. And one of the things that he recently talked about was the concept of Japanese sexuality. And while there are some things that are more taboo to them than they are to us, the idea of pornography and of the human body and of just sex in general as being a part of everyday life is much more acceptable and much more prevalent in Japanese culture.
Well,
Uh,
okay. Actually, I've been to Japan. Obviously, there's a reason why I'm called Lone Samurai.
mhm.
I've fought in Japan. I trained in Japan. But yeah, you say that, and this is going to be very difficult for some people to realize. But rape is a very natural thing in Japan. Unfortunately, it's a very big thing over there. And yeah, some of the things we have as taboo over here are kind of normal, but
Mhm.
that's because it depends. And again, it happened. I'm sorry to say, it does happen in America as well in some states. But in Japan, the more rural areas you go to, the less powerful women can be. Women are still powerful in Japan, always have been. They were the heads of the household. They could still fight, etc. But they were still not second class. That's not the word I'm looking for. But
Possessions.
they're not even possessions. But they
They were.
were lorded over.
Mm-hmm.
But they
So
were,
obviously
yeah,
weaker sex.
yeah, weaker sex. Yeah, there you go. That's the best way to put
But
it.
I think the and he made that. That's a very good point. I think the nature that I wanted to kind of put those comments out there for was to understand that when we talk about this entire topic tonight, we are coming at it also from the baseline that some of this, and we'll make an effort to point it out as we go along, all of us, is that some of the things that are going to be discussed are nothing malicious and nothing at all like that. It's just simply very different cultural perspective between us Westerners. Even you'll find it differences between me as and Nico as an American and Lone and Scarlet as people from the United Kingdom, and also the Japanese. Very different cultures, very different. So, starting off, let's. I think we had started, and I kind of moved the discussion aside in the first episode to save it. MMOs and RPGs, because the Western RPG has very much come onto the scene in the last few years, and it takes a radically different approach to a lot of things in the JRPG, and I'm not just talking gameplay mechanics. So it's hard for me to conceive of a Western RPG developer like BioWare or like Bethesda doing what Square Enix did to Aerith in Final Fantasy VII in one of their games.
Can I just can I say oh.
Go ahead,
Go for it,
Nico.
Neko.
Okay. It feels like the difference between RPGs is that it's literally you are playing the role in a Western RPG. You made that character. You are playing that role. In JRPGs, you're playing a story as a character instead. That's already pre-made for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe except for like the original Final Fantasies where you got to like do that, or Dragon Warrior, but they stopped that. They stopped doing that, and now it's about those characters that you have instead of Ultima or stuff
Yes.
like that.
And the Japanese RPG characters, I think, have, especially over time, become more and more hypersexualized, which is, we said, kind of a cultural thing. But let's just think about, Tifa. Or how about Final Fantasy X-2? Or Lightning?
Or we can talk about Neptuna. The more you
Oh,
undress, and they're
Well,
little
actually,
girls. The more you undress, the stronger you are.
yep.
yeah. Now, okay, you mentioned 10-2, but actually 10-2 or Final Fantasy Charlie's Angels Edition, as we call it, actually, I'd say 10-2 is actually more of a good example of girl power coming
Mm-hmm.
from Japan, because it's the three girls, whereas, well, three women, sorry. Whereas Final Fantasy X, Tidus is the main character. It's still a male lead.
Yep.
The
Whereas
strange thing is
10-2,
about Yuna's story instead of his.
well, yeah,
really
it's about Yuna, but
it's really weird
But you
stuff.
can't. But Square Enix couldn't have the main lead be a female.
Yeah,
So,
it's possible.
also, who remembers Riku's intro movie in that game?
That underage 16-year-old ass.
Yeah. And Riku actually
It's
is a.
legal in this country.
yeah, 16 is legal here.
It's-
And to be fair, I was not that much older when that came out.
It's
So
14 is you can I forget what it's called, but you can say you're allowed to have sex at 14 in Japan if I remember so correctly.
yes,
Age of
legal
consent.
age of consent is 14.
It's a
in
consent.
Japan.
Thank you.
for age of consent is pretty close where I live too. But let's just talk about the fact that Riku, the way she's presented, represents an ongoing trope that you can see in a lot of JRPGs. I can jump back 2 games in the Final Fantasy series to Yuffie.
Yeah.
You can take not Luca, the princess in Chrono Trigger. So, but all those characters in their own right. In fact, if you remember the way that Final Fantasy X was broken, Riku basically could become a god.
Yeah. She was,
Item
she was Riku was actually one of the best characters in both games.
Yeah,
Because especially in 2, when you gave her Oren's outfit, she
Mhm.
became. She was
A
beast.
goddess.
I can remember taking Riku, my whole party dead except Riku, into the final fight of Final Fantasy X and just one-shotting him. Just not even using a special skill, just a basic attack, and he's gone. So, but in contrast, we look at the Western RPG. Now, Skyrim, the Dovahkiin can be anything you want him to be, her to be, it to be. And,
Them cat ladies.
yes, and them
I
lizard
play
peoples.
lizards and cat people.
Me
And
too.
the Dovahkiin runs around covered in oppressively heavy armor with spiky things sticking out of it. Because why not?
Unless you play a light armor character
Yeah.
and go assassin. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're
More
still pretty
spicy,
well
more
covered.
damage.
Or we could jump onto one that, and Nico, I think we've had this discussion a little bit. Let's just talk about Smite real quick.
Tits, ass, titty, ass, titty, titty.
Now,
Then
let's
again,
let's
Yeah,
be
you play
perfect.
the game.
Let's be perfectly fair though. In Smite, you have just as many male gods who are pretty close to being butt naked as the female gods.
but when we think about the mythology, they're usually naked.
Oh yeah, actually, I love the. Somebody pointed this out. I think it might have been Game Theory pointed out that people got all up in arms over the way Kali was portrayed as having too little clothing on, and he immediately just popped up a picture of the way Kali was depicted in Indian mythology, and she's butt naked, bathing in blood, with only her hair covering her nipples. And it's like,
There is a lot of nakedness in
And it's like-
Greek mythology. They go around.
yeah, and it's like you're yelling at Hi-Rez for having her too scantily clad, where Hi-Rez has her in about 200% more clothing than your own depictions do.
But they think it's still disrespectful.
Yeah,
It's one of those things. It's just a religion thing. We
but
don't want you to talk about our religion because you don't know shit. So you gotta listen to us because we know better.
But I think Smite is actually, and Nico, turn down your mic just a hair. You're feeding back through the Connect. I think Smite is actually a kind of an interesting example of a Western game because all of the gods in Smite, all of them are hyper caricatures. And Odin, gigantic dude wearing gigantic bear skin with a gigantic spear and just completely over the top. You have Sobek, who's a freaking walking crocodile with an axe taller than he is. And then you turn around and you've got Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love, and Aphrodite's got boobs hanging out for days. Like Aphrodite's side boob could blind a small island nation. And then, you turn, the opposite of the spectrum. I mean, Thanatos is pretty much covered head to toe in armor, including his face. Like his whole head, he has no expressions. His head is an armored mask that's terrifying. Or Nico's favorite, Hades.
That skeleton face.
That cow head skull.
Oh
But
yeah.
but imagine if Smite had been made by a Japanese developer. What do you think it would have looked like, guys?
Male Hades? Well, they do use skeletons and stuff like that, and
But do you think that you would still have like Apollo running around shirtless?
Yes.
yes, have you seen Orin High School Host Club and all that manga stuff?
No, you know what? You made me play Hatoful Boyfriend, and that was enough.
But that's just about birds. You haven't witnessed Lifetime. I can show you Japan.
Please don't. So, but anyways, to get back to the point.
Shining happy and sorry.
To get
Males
back
are
to
sexualized in Japanese stuff too.
Yep.
They are.
they are.
If they'll sell. It'll sell.
So, why do you guys think it is that there's this perception that all the Japanese games are perverted?
There's a lot of them are.
Because 50 to maybe 75% of them is.
Okay.
Because Kotaku tell us they are.
Nico, weren't you the one who played an indie game where you punched a naked girl in a bathtub?
Yes. I was the older brother, and I wanted her out of that bathtub. So I got into the bathtub and beat her up. You can grope her crotch and you can grope her breasts while doing it.
As the brother.
As the brother. She says,
But
Nichan,
then again,
no.
that is-
Nichan,
that
no.
is- Again, that is Japan.
It is. It is.
You can literally beat her up until she passes out, by the way.
Yeah, it's that. This is the thing: is that when we say Eastern, we're actually talking anywhere from Ireland east, because even in the UK, when we were a Roman country. This was Greek Roman sort of that happened. What you're talking about? Okay, the difference with say America, because there's only what
200 years
250 years of history.
They're babies.
We're babies.
Yeah,
We're the
Yeah, it's a
babies,
baby
the
country.
babies.
From the UK back, those things happened in history. They're documented.
Mm-hmm.
Even where we are right now, in the centre of the UK, we're on a major Roman area in the UK, and we actually have documented like history right here where we are of that sort of shit going on. So it's not like it's well for us it's unnatural because this is 2014, but back then it was perfectly normal.
And it's, like I said, cultural perceptions, but also changes over time because, and also it goes back to the fact that we are not going to go into a whole socio-political history lesson here about America, but you got to remember that America was founded largely by Puritans. So
Yeah.
it's
But then again, you say that we're a Christian country, so and it was those same Puritans that were here and then went over to America.
No, we're
Yeah.
secular.
We're secular now.
God and state are separate, which
They
is
are.
actually really good because that allows a cosmopolitan. But yeah, I mean, you're saying like Japan is like that now. It's like I used to know the dates that incest was outlawed in England, like Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. It was from like the 1600s. For England, it was from like the 1800s.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like one of those. It's like with ancient Greece, if you ever read the old stories, Zeus put it about, and he didn't care whether they were family or not. it's kind of one of those. It's something that's always existed. Sodomy, gay relationship, being bisexual, that was never frowned upon in Roman times.
No.
It was only when sort of
male gay,
Christianity
female gay
became
was.
such a big thing that they decided it was evil. So,
The
you
mind-
know, it's kind of like, well, you're saying cultural differences. It's not to say they're less developed or they're more developed, because, you know, Europe used to be like that. We've just changed our way of thinking.
Yeah, it's perception. It is all perception. Is all it is. So.
And well, you mentioned Zeus there, the Minotaur legend. That was Zeus putting his dick in a cow.
He put his dick in a swan.
He put his dick in a swan. Our queen is not happy about this, but it happened.
Well,
No,
Yeah, I
he
mean,
was
even
a
if you go
swan
back,
and
like,
tricked Hera and then raped her.
well, think
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
think about where Odin's horse came from.
His son liked to fuck animals. Because
Loki's
Fenrir
not-
existed too.
Loki's not his son.
I know. I was adoptive son. I'm sorry.
There is
He
nothing.
still put his dick in a horse.
There is nothing adoptive about. Well, no. Loki turned into the horse and was mated with by another horse. So.
Oh yeah, you're right. He was the mama.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
There's nothing.
Yeah, that's the
Come
thing.
on, like, not
Loki was turned in. Loki was the bitch in that relationship.
It's like a present for daddy.
But there's nothing.
But
There's
funny
nothing
thing-
adoptive
funny
in
thing
that
is now,
relationship.
the mental image we have now is that's Tom Hiddleston.
I don't care if he's a horse.
As soon as
In fact, I'm all for
as
it.
to break since we've gone off the rails anyways, as soon as we're done with the show, I'm going to find a picture of two horses mating and Photoshop Tom Hiddleston's face onto both of them.
Yeah, please send it to me. My private time.
All right.
No one's allowed.
So, to drag us back on topic, what do you guys think are the games in that you've played recently, or well, not even recently, but in Western culture and Japanese culture, and we'll just go around real quick, that have been the best about this topic and the worst about this topic? And we'll start with Nico because she does a lot of this.
A lot of best.
Oh, or worst, go.
The worst is how children are portrayed as sex objects, or barely under the barely above the legal line, or they're 20 but they're children. That's the worst.
Okay.
But what I like about Japanese culture is how much story they put in, and they can get really fucking creative with their games when they decide not to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. In Eastern culture, I like being able to be the character. I like.
You mean Western culture?
I know. I was thinking about it. Western culture, I like being the character. In Skyrim, you can make your own character. In BioWare, technically your own character. What I don't like about it, it's almost the same way why I hate Eastern, except that they're at least adults in the legal age. But yeah.
All right, you two can flip a coin.
Ladies first.
Why, thank you. I'm not too sure actually. I have very little experience of Eastern culture, and any Eastern game I've played has been adapted for a Western audience. So I've played things like Pokemon, Ninja Gaiden, and that sort of thing, so I couldn't really give a true opinion. But I think when it comes to perverted stuff, I mean, I'm looking at the Xbox 360 game I have that I borrowed from Poltergeist Zero. The Stick of Truth, South Park. That was so perverted, they cut scenes from it in Britain and Australia, but not America. And it's kind of like, well, is it... I think perversion is kind of a matter for the senses.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not up to the audience, because we don't see all of that. We get it sort of hand-fed to us. I mean, we're supposed to be like an independent state, the Western world, we don't have all that communism looking down on us. But everything that gets brought to us still has an 18th certificate, or has, some sort of censorship that decides that it's good for us to see certain things and not others. So I think from a cultural point of view, I think it doesn't have to be a cultural point of view. I think it has to be a personal one. Are you ready to see that sort of thing? Like, for me, I would never watch The Human Centipede. For me, that's just smut. But I'll watch as much South Park as I can get. So, it's kind of like, I think it's individual standards that dictates that more than cultural implications.
Pokemon is a whole show in and of itself, almost.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned that because...
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment.
It's not cultured.
I wanted to...
Opposing views, monster racing games. Can you fuck it? Can you not? Let's talk about it.
And yeah, well,
Lone. Don't ask Nico about cakes. Do not ask Nico about cakes.
Can you fuck the cakes?
Right. Go
Well,
ahead,
It's
Lone.
not.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the thing is that there are good and bad examples. Okay, the difference is with Japan there are more bad examples, but again, that's because again, as Neko said, it's a cultural thing. Um, Although it does say a lot about Neko that she plays a lot more JRPGs and sees that. But but yeah,
I don't
we
recommend.
also have a bad opinion here because of media outlets
Mhm.
who tell us what they want us to think. There are sometimes there are too many opinion pieces, um, and the same goes for anime and manga. The
Shut
same
the
go-
show if you say no too many opinion pieces.
there are too many opinion pieces, but that's why we have opposing views. But got to get the title in.
Title.
But this is the thing: is that yeah, there are good and bad things in Japan. For instance, Street Fighter has one of the biggest female role models out there, Chun Li. She's a badass. She was taught by Ryu and then kicked his ass in the law.
She's also Chinese.
She's got damn good thighs and a good rack, but she's also a mean badass who beat the shit out of Vega and kicked him out of a building. So it says it all. Yeah, you've got games like that, but then you've also got Pokemon, which is very ambiguous. And let's be honest, how many of those female characters has Ash slept with whilst they're walking around? It's probably a lot more than Brock.
Don't you dare ruin my childhood.
I'm
Don't
sorry.
you dare ruin my childhood.
The cartoon ruined your childhood.
Misty X
And then,
Ash
of course-
OTP.
Whoa, whoa.
No one ever was. Okay, on that same note, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yes.
The fighting scenes are the same in both the
Sentai.
US and the Japan version. But if you watch the Japanese version, there's a lot of sexualization in that. It's where
Ruining my child.
I'm not ruining your childhood because
He's right. Super Sentai had a lot of that stuff. And
yeah, exactly. There's the Japanese version. The fight scenes are the same in both versions, but the storyline is far more sexualized in the Japanese version compared to the Beverly Hills 90210 that is the US version. And that's what it is. But David Jason Frank is still cool. I'm sorry. There you go. I said it. Green Ranger all the way.
They're all dead.
Fair enough.
No, they're not.
He's the oldest living Power Ranger. Apparently they are in the new ones. I watched it and then cried.
Oh right, right. You mean actually?
Oh, you meant the show, not real life. I was like, huh?
Story is real life.
The story is real life. Oh my god.
Why do
Yeah.
you think I taught gymnastics? I thought taking gymnastics would automatically make me a martial artist. I'd run like that, save the day, and then Risa would become huge and I'd kick her ass.
then you would ice skate.
This is Scarlet Dragon, everybody. Scarlet Dragon.
So,
You could be like me.
you know what? I'm really pleased with this episode because it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Everybody had different views, and everybody talked about how culture and cultural perception change those views and how they neither make them necessarily right nor wrong. They simply make them a matter of personal perception, which is what this entire show, and particularly this episode, comes down to, is personal taste, personal perception, personal ideas of what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, what's right, what's wrong, what's moral, what's immoral. That was the entire premise of putting this topic on here, and I want to thank you guys for doing a great job for talking about it, because it's not an easy discussion to have. Like, not an easy thing to kind of articulate and put into words and make sense. So, yeah, I think the bottom line for this show, and next time we come back, I anticipate that we will have some at least one developer with us. But bottom line for this show is, and I guess for all things opposing views, is that they are only opinions, and everybody has their own, and everybody's entitled to their own. Fair enough?
No, you only listen to my opinion.
When
This
it
has
gets to that
been
bench, you're sitting on
opposing.
time.
Huh? Oh God.
Neko
Also-
said it was.
Also, this will be the this will be the last time that you hear Nekokitwolf on the show. Say bye bye. No.
Bye bye.
Sing for us, Neko. Sing for us.
I want to be the best.
You're the best, like no one ever was.
Oh God.
Catch time and beat 'em up. Then take 'em to Japan. Travel across the land.
Please stop.
Box of mail.
All right, Nico. Oh my God. I'm gonna. I want a fully mastered track for that to play for my show. Um, anyways,
Can't capture a dime.
Oh,
Got
someone
it.
could have told me my belly was hanging out. No.
you know what? I'm not going to go in and edit that out either. So, all right. Well, thanks once again to Nico, Scarlett, and Lone for joining us. So I will put a link up to previous episodes of Opposing Views and possibly something else with explosions. It depends on how I feel when I finally edit this. You can hit subscribe and like coming up to keep track of everything else that I'm doing. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. My name is Digmbot. We'll see you next time.